Welcome to Catherine's tutorial. Today we are going to learn about the mechanism of respiration that takes place in plants and also animals. And we know that plants prepare their own food by means of a process known as photosynthesis. By using the raw material present in the atmosphere, they produce glucose. This glucose should get converted into energy form, that is nothing but the ATP, to produce energy for completing their life processes. This conversion of glucose into energy happens by a series of steps. We call it as respiration. So respiration is nothing but the chemical breakdown of glucose into the energy form known as ATP. So initial steps, that is the first step of this respiration, is nothing but the glycolysis process. So glycolysis is the first step of respiration, and the important glycolysis is a common pathway for both aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. So the glycolysis process happens in the presence of oxygen, and it also happens in the absence of oxygen. So it means it doesn't require oxygen to complete this process. So both aerobic organism and anaerobic organisms, they take up the pathway of glycolysis. So glycolysis occurs in cytoplasm of the cell. So the region where the glycolysis takes place in a cell is cytoplasm. As a result of glycolysis, what happens? There is a breakdown of glucose. The word glycolysis represents, or it gives the exact meaning. What is this process? Glyco represents sugar and lysis represents splitting. The splitting of sugar molecule is known as glycolysis. So glucose is actually breakdown into pyruvic acid. Glucose is a 6-carbon compound and pyruvic acid or pyruvate is a 3-carbon compound. So the 6-carbon glucose molecule produces 2 molecules of 3-carbon compound known as pyruvic acid or pyruvate. This process doesn't require oxygen. So no requirement of oxygen. The end product is actually the pyruvate as a result of glycolysis. This pyruvate may enter into Krebs cycle. That is the next step, and if oxygen is present. Or otherwise, in the absence of oxygen, pyruvic acid, which forms ethyl alcohol and carbon dioxide without the help of any cell organelle. This process we call it as anaerobic respiration. Glycolysis involves 3 important steps. The first step is known as energy spending phase. Energy spending phase. The next step in glycolysis is the splitting phase. The third phase of the glycolysis is energy conserving phase. Energy conserving phase. You can able to understand why this is known as energy spending phase, why it is known as splitting phase, and why it is known as energy conserving phase when we go with this series of steps that is involved in glycolysis process. Now we'll just move into glycolysis, the step that is the first one, the first phase, energy spending phase.